Shabbat Shalom. Most of us know the little proverb, man does not live by bread alone. Very few of us know where it comes from. Most frequently, people assume that this proverb means that physical sustenance, food, is insufficient to meet all of our human needs. We assume that this proverb means that we need more than just bread, more than just physical sustenance in order to survive. To thrive, rather than to survive, we conclude that this means that we also need cultural, intellectual, artistic, and even spiritual stimulation, as well as physical food and nourishment. So where does this proverb come from? Where does it teach us, where do we learn that man does not live by bread alone? The answer is, surprisingly, the Torah. And even more surprising, this proverb occurs in this week's Torah portion, parsha Ekev. What is also unknown is the context within which this wisdom saying is embedded. After telling us that bread alone is insufficient for sustaining life, the verse in the Torah continues, rather, human beings live on that which issues forth from the mouth of the Lord. That is to say, our survival is dependent on what God says and what God decrees. The fuller context of this verse, of this wisdom statement, is a further reminder to the people of Israel to remember how God has cared for Israel during their 40-year sojourn in the wilderness. On the one hand, God tested Israel's mettle, subjecting them to hardship and even to hunger. But on the other hand, God also provided the Israelites with manna, made certain that their clothes did not wear out, and that their feet did not blister during the years of walking and wandering in the wilderness. This context now changes the meaning of the saying that we do not live by bread alone, but rather we live by God's decree. God's decree in the wilderness was that the Israelites would live not on bread, but instead on manna. Manna, of course, was plentiful and ubiquitous, but after a while it became repetitive and boring. Nonetheless, it was manna that sustained the Israelites, and manna, whatever it was, existed only because God decreed that it exists. In this context, man does not live by bread alone means not that we need more than bread, more than food to survive, but in fact that we can survive on even less than bread. For those of us born after the Great Depression and after World War II, that idea makes no sense at all. We have all grown up on a well-balanced diet with a variety of foods and flavors. But just ask anyone who survived the concentration camps, the labor camps, the deprivations of the Depression, the Holocaust, and life under the Soviet regime in the USSR and its satellite states, and they will tell you that they know full well that despite the monotony of meager portions of rationed foods, one can still survive. So the Torah tells us, so long as Moses was alive, the Israelites never went without their daily portion of manna. By God's decree, manna appeared every day, with a double portion provided on Friday in anticipation of Shabbat. Despite the monotony of the same food day in, day out, the Israelites never went hungry. By God's decree, as it were, the Israelites lived for a generation not on bread, but instead on manna. No doubt they complained, but they showed that human beings could survive just on the food that God decreed. We who have so much, we whose diet is both balanced and varied, need to catch ourselves when we consider complaining about our diet and the food we're served. The truth is that we can survive on less if we need to. And we need to thank God and acknowledge all those who bring to our markets and our table the plentiful variety of foods we so easily take for granted. Just a few verses after this wisdom statement in the Torah adds the line, Ve'achalta v'savata uverachta et Adonai Elohecha al ha'aretz hatova asher natan lach. When you eat and you are filled, you shall bless the Lord your God. That is the origin of the grace after meals, Birkat Hamazon. And we would do well if after we eat, we thank God for the food we eat. For when we say man does not live by bread alone, it doesn't mean that we need more than bread. What it means is we must be thankful for the bread and all that goes with it, for we can certainly even live on less. Shabbat Shalom and Amen.